Good evening and welcome to this digitally enabled online meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth held on Monday, March 15th, 2021. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg, and tonight, just for a little bit of a difference, I brought in my mother's shillelagh because I recognize that this is the council meeting closest to St. Patrick's Day, which is normally a very festive time in North Perth and in Listowel in particular. It's probably hard to imagine that my mother was Irish, but she was, and so even with a name like Kasenberg, there's Irish blood in me. I celebrate that by bringing her shillelagh as my gavel for tonight's meeting. So I call the meeting to order. I'll ask the deputy clerk to note our time for the minutes as 7 p.m. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. This direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Thank you. Welcome to those joining us tonight via the YouTube channel. Welcome to councillors, staff members, and delegations who will participate in tonight's meeting. We look forward to hearing from you. At this time, I invite your decorum over the course of the meeting. And if you don't behave, I have shillelagh here apparently. And I advise that I have late attendance regrets from Councillor Johnston. He expects to attend a little bit later tonight. Let's move first to item 2.1 of our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing already, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. Let's begin first with Councillor who has pre-declared. Councillor Anstead, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. Through you this evening, I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest on item 5.4.1, the accounts, as my son attends the St. Mary's daycare, and also on item 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Thanks. Next up is Councillor Berens. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. Through you, I would like to declare a conflict of pecuniary interest on 5.4.2, the accounts, and 13.1, as I have grandchildren attending both the North Perth Spinrite Child and Family Center, as well as the St. Mary's Day Care, and both locations after school programming. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Berens. And Deputy Mayor Kellum, I think you're up next.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Todd. I'd like to declare pecuniary interest on items 5.4.1, the delegation from Perth Metals, 5.4.2, the accounts regarding to Perth Metals, as my mother and father are tenants there, and then also 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kellum. Are there any other councillors with declarations to make that haven't submitted beforehand in writing? All right, to explain our virtual processes, I will be systematically trying to seek consent from councillors as movers and seconders of the various resolutions and bylaws that will be put before us tonight. I will do this to some degree alphabetically. I guess it all depends where I start. Should a councillor not wish to respond to the request, they may say so, and I will move to the next name on the alphabetical list. Regarding speaking to our business, councillors tonight will identify themselves through our conferencing technologies chat function. The clerk is assisting me tonight in maintaining the speaking order from that source. Councillors are allowed on their turn to deliver a primary question or comment and may make one supplemental. We will follow speaking order carefully, and any councillor wishing to have a second say will have to indicate again and go to the bottom of the list This is a normal process consistent with our governing Robert's Rules of Order. Councillors are reminded that if I believe you are not audible, I will call on you. Councillors are further asked to maintain a mute state in the web conference until I have called upon you for a verbal reaction. Should any of your votes not show up in eScribe, our voting software, I will call on you when things seem stalled to register a manual vote. At that time, take yourself off mute, answer yes or no, then return to mute. Regarding 2.2 of our agenda, I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting that reads as follows: that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Councillor Richardson, let's start with you tonight. Would you be our mover for that?
I will move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Rothwell, will you serve as our seconder?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate on this one? Let's have the vote. Okay, we're not seeing Councillor Duncan's vote yet. Councillor Duncan, what's...
It didn't show up. I'm in favor.
Thank you. And with that, that's carried, noting Councillor Johnston's absence. Okay, that puts us at item 3 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. These items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they require either council's recognition and or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. There are 6 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, do any of you have a desire to extract any of these items for further discussion or action? If so, please indicate in the chat function. We're not seeing any, so I have a resolution for our consideration that reads as follows: that consent items 3.1 to 3.6 be received for information, and the minutes of the March 8th, 2021 regular council meeting be adopted. We'll call on Councillor Seiler to be our mover for this one.
I'll move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Andreessen, will you second that?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate from council? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Council, I will note that I took note at least of the Ontario Fire College messaging to us. I think, of course, this was probably a broad public distribution, but perhaps Chief Smith, who is with us and will present a little bit later tonight, will give us a little bit of an update as to what is understood at this current time on a matter that this council has expressed its will on. But at this time, then, it's proposed that we move to agenda item number 4. We have no public meetings for tonight's meeting. Further, we have no delegations at this stage. We will a little bit later for asking for an audience with the council tonight. So that brings us to agenda item number 5, reports from departments and key staff. We have no reports. No, I'm not right. We have many reports. Gosh, my notes are bad today. We have a couple of reports from the CAO's department for tonight's meeting. I'll get it together. For item 5.1.1, council is presented with the report bringing forward a matter discussed and endorsed by its Human Resources Committee pertaining to the request to add a new position to the organization's chart and to approve a position description and proceed with recruitment and hiring. The CAO, Chris Snell, is bringing this matter forward for our attention. So I guess we begin with CAO Snell. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As Council is aware, the CAO Administrative Assistant retired last May, and because of the circumstances with the pandemic, that position was not replaced immediately. And we have reevaluated the tasks that have been deployed to other departments in the meantime. But we are bringing forward a readjustment of the duties of that position, and the main focus being help for human resources. But we'll be picking up a lot of those duties that were sort of related to human resources vacated by the CAO's admin assistant. Some of the other duties that will be redeployed and stay redeployed will be Perth Meadows, which will be soon become a facilities issue, as well as some of the community support for some selected committees. So that is really the update, and certainly you can see the job description and the duties that the new position will be fulfilling. Any extra available time in this person's day will be used to assist communications and community development with special projects. So at this time, I guess the other comment is this was included in the 2021 budget, but at this time I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, CEO Snell. Council questions or first comments? Councillor Anstead?
Thanks, Mayor Kasenberg, through you. Thanks, Chris, for the report. Just a quick question. I didn't see it on the job description or the summary. What's the breakdown between the administrative department for their duties, and what's the breakdown for the human resources duties? Like, how much is the percentage for each? Thank you.
We figure it'll be probably about a 70-30 split. 70% dedicated to human resources and 30% dedicated to the other duties.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're not seeing any other indication at this time for questions or comments. So I have a resolution for consideration that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the job description for the HR Administrative Services Assistant, and that Human Resources begin the recruitment process as soon as possible. Councillor Anstead, would you care to move this one?
Yes, I would move that. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Behrens, would you consider seconding this one?
Yes, I would second that. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Okay, we're not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 5.1.2, also human resources related. Again, coming from with with Council's Human Resources Committee's blessing, there are two policy matters that have been considered to support effectiveness in the workplace. I'll invite again Mr. Snell to introduce this report.
Thank you again. As Council may be aware, right now senior staff receive 37.5 hours in lieu time for attendance for council meetings, and are permitted to flex their time through their 2-week pay period. But some of the feedback we've received through exit interviews, staff survey, and annual performance evaluations is senior management are looking to have a better work-life balance and more sort of flexibility to their schedule. So we did take a look at our current in lieu policies and compared those against other municipalities. And the one thing that has also changed, we're certainly meeting more often than ever, actually. And so we did bring back a revised plan for council to consider regarding senior management. And I guess just before I talk about the new policy, all other staff are allowed to bank hours 1-for-1 and use that flex time as they see fit throughout the year. So we're looking at upping the flex time for attendance at staff meeting or for council meetings, going from basically 5 days up to 8 days. And they will have to attend those council meetings to receive that flex time, as well as being able to bank up to 40 hours to allow more flexibility outside of the pay period for senior staff to manage their workload. So far, this has been circulated to senior management with positive feedback. And as it says in the report, we're looking for have a positive impact on the work-life balance for senior staff. And the second issue is a result of some of the COVID changes. So right now, it's possible that people with young children are required to now isolate if the child has one symptom either in daycare or in school. Right now, we do not have any sick time for our part-time employees. So we are looking at putting in a temporary policy that will provide our part-time with some ability to have up to 3 sick days for 3 subsequent shifts to be covered. And this will allow them at least time to get a COVID test if required without being penalized. This policy is temporary and only in place for 2021. We've calculated the cost of the sick benefits to be approximately a little over $3,000 per year. And that can certainly be covered in the budget because most of the time the staff hours are already accounted for. And certainly the first policy has no financial implications. So again, certainly as the mayor has mentioned, these have been passed by the HR committee and certainly willing to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thanks, CAO Snell. Questions and first comments on this one? Fairfields, are we seeing any indication of that? Okay. So I have a resolution then for our consideration, again, representing something that has been endorsed and brought forward to council from the Human Resources Committee. Councillor Rothwell. Oh, okay. Councillor Rothwell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, and thanks, Chris, for the report. I just questions in your presentation. You said an increase on the senior staff from 5 days, I believe you said, to 8. But my math shows that we're going from 37.5 hours to up to 40 hours. Is that correct, or did I miss something there? Could you just clarify, please? Thank you.
So it's up to 60 hours for attendance at staff meetings. So that's separate than the flex time. So staff are basically required to attend staff meetings, and for that we've always given 37.5 hours. But because we're meeting so often, we did increase it to 60 hours. But they will have to attend the staff meetings to accumulate that, and then it's up to 40 hours for other meetings, like for example, let's just use recreation for attending RAC meetings or other meetings outside of council, or special night meetings, or even just at times when staff are busy and working extended hours. They can now bank up to 40 hours and use that flex time throughout the year.
Thanks for the clarification. I thought we had bundled them together, but they're two separate. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else with questions? First comments? Okay, so I have a resolution for our consideration. It reads as follows. Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the listed policies as amendments to the Human Resource Policy, item C-1.1, hours of work, and item D-2.5.1, part-time COVID sick time. Councillor Duncan, can I call on you to serve as our mover for this one?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, great report, Chris, and Alan, good comments. You know, this was a lengthy discussion at our last HR meeting and fully support this. So yes, I will second it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? We're not seeing any indication, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. That brings us to item 5.2. We have no report indicated tonight from our clerk department. But you can be assured, as always, that they are working hard, including during this meeting, supporting our efforts. We turn now then to item 5.3, reports from the programs department. For item 5.3.1, staff have brought forward a report that intends to respond to council's resolution formulated in November of 2019 regarding developing a policy and practices platform for the establishment and running of a dog park in North Perth. I'll ask North Perth Manager of Programs Amy Gangle to provide us with an introduction to the work done on this request to date. Ms. Gangle.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Yes, with recent discussions happening within the community, as well as things getting a bit more onto route with us moving forward with reopenings, we felt it was a time to bring this information back for council. So what we did was we compiled, did a summary of the history of where we've been from this time, and some updates for council with regards to actions that have occurred with regards to dog park. So we were meeting with an organization called Wagon Tail Dog Park. They were one of the delegations back in 2019. Proposing a location or request for some lands for that. So we were meeting with the representatives, and we were doing site visits, and we were reviewing, moving forward with looking at this possibility. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, this project did get was not a priority for staff at that point. We needed to be deployed to other areas and avenues, so it was sit. But we did continue our communications with Wagon Tail Dog Park and keeping them informed as well as engaged. And they were very, very appreciative of it. They too just felt they would take a break during that period of time, and that they would reach out to us when they were ready to reintroduce this. We did maintain communication with the group, just making sure that things were okay and that they knew that we were still involved. Unfortunately, in the summer of 2020, the key members from the Wagon Tail Dog Park, for personal reasons, being closer to family, they chose to move to a different community, and therefore they dissolved the organization. They were able to raise a little bit of money, and they were, it was very generous for them to make that donation to the municipality, and we have set that aside in a reserve specific for any future possibility of a dog park. What this got us doing is thinking a little bit more about some other alternatives. One of the trickiest components of this is deciding on the best location for a park such as this for council to consider. You know, and it sometimes gets to be a tough decision, and possibility of some subjective decision making in there. So what staff have proposed or proposing for council is a bit more of an objective approach, is where we're suggesting some guidelines for the development of a dog park, taking away any specific locations right off the bat initially, and looking at what criteria would we require or what do we need in order for a dog park to be a success. And so that's what we've drafted for council's consideration. It lays out responsibilities. It does include the involvement of a community group, taking feedback from other organizations and other municipalities who have dog parks. Having a community group seems an essential key part of this, and a positive partnership towards the successful operations of a park. And as we indicated, it highlights some criteria for locations, and then it goes through a proposed process for moving forward with a potential dog park. So we've laid that out for council. We've also identified a draft of terms of reference for a potential dog park to be considered, and all of these items can be drafted or edited as we move forward with this process. We did highlight the rules as well, just for council. And then we began looking at what if there was, you know, to create a complaint process for a dog park. So those are just drafts that we have. We have highlighted and brought this forward to our bylaw enforcement and received feedback At this stage, they're comfortable with this. They feel that most of this is fairly straightforward. They did have a suggestion that we perhaps maybe define, have a guideline definitions of what scale point behaviors are for animals, for example, for aggressions and behaviors, just for as an education piece for the public. So we will work on something like that. So tonight it is just for council to receive, but open for it to answer any questions or to receive any direction if there's anything that they seem to be missing. Staff would like to bring this back in April for a direction from council.
Thanks, Ms. Kangle. Interesting report. I'll turn over to council. I think there are some questions here. Who's Councilor Andreessen?
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for your report. And through you, Mayor Kasenberg, I have a couple questions. One question is just around whether the park itself, any consideration would be for patrons to do like scooping up of any messes that a dog might do, or is that not common policy in these parks? I didn't see it at all when I was reading through the, you know, all your information, which was really well documented, but I didn't see that. And I didn't know if that's something that's done in most areas or not. And that was one of my questions. The second question is just around the fact around raising money, like fundraising for bits and parts of this type of park. And I just wondered if it might be a consideration to, you know, if we move forward, would be to do some fundraising on the lighting, and have that staged, so that perhaps if we go forward, we could put a park together, but maybe the lighting would come later. And I wondered if that might be a possibility to phase this in. So thanks a lot, Amy. I appreciate you working on all this.
Thank you, Councillor Andreessen. Yes, absolutely. We can be a bit more clear with regards to your first inquiry about cleaning up after your pet. It is highlighted in the rules and etiquette, and it also does fall under current bylaws that exist for animal ownership. But we can be a little bit more clear for individuals if that's not coming out very clear in what we've highlighted. Second, with regards to phasing in, certainly, yes, it will depend on the location that is chosen of where lighting already exists and what lighting needs to happen. And certainly, yes, we could definitely incorporate that as part of, you know, funding and additional phasing if as a plan.
Thank you, Amy. Just you know, in terms of signage, perhaps signage around cleaning up after one's animal might be part of the signage that would be around that dog park, so that people don't assume that because it is a dog park, they can let things go. Just cleaning up might be important. Thanks so much, Amy.
Deputy Mayor Kellum is next.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Kasenberg. A great report, Amy. You know, I read it not once but twice yesterday, and then I had my wife Jan read through it in case I missed something. But all good. Obviously in favor of a dog park, and we're in the right direction. The only thing I have that I noted was I'm not really in favor of the 6 a.m. to the 11 p.m. guidelines. I think maybe we should follow the 7 a.m. light construction around here, as well as maybe cutting it off at 10 p.m. But other than that, looks all good, a great start, and we'll move forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your suggestions.
Anyone else on council have questions, comments? Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks, Mayor Todd, and thanks, Amy, for the report. Just further to Deputy Mayor Callum's comments. I had expressed some, or have been concerned about the potential for lighting and hours of operation of the proposed dog park. I mean, clearly we've had years, soccer fields, for example, having no lights. And just, of course, we have our new soccer field with lights now is upon us. So I think that's one of the issues. Cost, as Councillor Andreessen said, is a component part. And I'll just hold off on that comment for any response that you have. And then I do have a supplementary. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. Again, depending on locations where we find when we go through those assessments to see what lighting might be needed for that. This may be a good opportunity for us to consider solar lighting, depending on that location as well. So certainly is one of the components when evaluating location and what costs would be involved with it.
Thanks, Amy. My second question is this, and with the individuals behind the Wags and Tails group that have since had other issues draw them away from the community here, are there any others that were dog owners and so on that are a semblance of a group that would step forward? If they're not, I'm concerned that an April date to bring forward this may be premature, given the fact that we've said that we're not looking at proceeding with the dog part unless there's some sort of coordinated effort from a group in terms of the preferred option of having a dog owners group step forward and take responsibility to help with its operation and so on. Thank you.
No, well, thank you very much, Councillor Rothwell. And that highlights I might not be very clear with the guidelines for the development of the dog park. The first one is that a community group must be established, and we've identified what their roles and responsibilities are. So community members must come together and they must decide, that they're willing to put this effort in and be a good partnership with the municipality in order for this to even exist. So what I would be coming back to council in April are the guidelines so that we can educate the public on what steps would be required for this project to occur. But I can be a little bit more clear to identify that, maybe the order of it, or just being a bit more clear that's an essential a key criteria with regards to the establishment of this. With regards to the current, or sorry, the past group, no, unfortunately, I don't have additional names of the groups other than the ones that I was working with. However, there have been some expressions from the community that have expressed a desire for a dog park, and we've reached out to those individuals and we've filled them in on past actions, where we've been and how things are going. And so tonight's presentation hopefully will also educate the public to maybe get them engaged to be able to move forward with those steps.
Good work, Amy, and you and your staff, and hopefully those dog owners will step forward to help us get a dog park in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Councillor Seiler is next.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Thank you, Amy, for your report. I actually had the opportunity to visit a dog park on my snowmobile trip going through Owen Sound this winter. I was going through, it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the people were just coming. I could see them in the parking lot dropping the dogs into the park. So I did stop and I watched for a bit, and it wasn't long until I had a friend over at the fence wondering who I was. But anyhow, the Old Sound Dog Park doesn't have any lighting, and it is in a fairly rural part of the city, and they have like a shelter, and there's and whatnot that I could see, and it wouldn't maybe hurt to get some information from them on how theirs run and some of the questions that have been asked tonight by the different counselors and whatnot, because it was maybe an acre at the most, and what have you. But it was very interesting to watch, and it'd be interesting how they operate and what problems they have and foresight. So anyhow, that's just my comment towards your dog park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seiler. Yes, we've actually reached out to many dog parks. We've researched websites. We've spoken with individuals. We've talked about the pros and cons. Owen Sound was one of them. We've also spoken to additional enforcements, community groups, to sort of look at what the actually, and also dog trainers, you know, what are common problems, what things we should have in our dog park, not have in our dog park. Shelters is actually a concern only because it creates blind areas for some animals. It's all actually comes down to just the culture that the dog owners create in that environment, and that would be education and involvement. But yes, we do have about a 2-inch thick file that has lots of information that we can certainly pull up and, you know, gather more when we get to the logistics of what this park could look like, the specific tangible pieces, and then fundraise for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Gangle. I have a couple of questions and perhaps a suggestion for a resolution to the council. First, my first question is, to your knowledge, do any of the lands owned by the municipality meet the criteria that you have laid out in the criteria document for dog park?
On a general overall scan, yes, I believe there are some spaces that do.
Okay, that's useful news. Maybe it's not a further question. Maybe there is a comment here. I think I would like to see more about the implications of moving forward on a dog park project to bylaw enforcement. I certainly think that there are some implications that perhaps we don't fully understand at this point. And so as additional information for your next report to council on this matter, I would like to have consideration given to bylaw enforcement matters. And I think, you know, with regards to the resolution tonight as well, per Councillor Rothwell's comments, I think that your next report to council should also, in my opinion, include information about a dog owners group or the nucleation of SANE that is willing to partner and to drive this project forward to some degree. I'd rather wait and see that we have those conditions met before council sees its next report on this to be quite direct. Any feedback, any thoughts on that?
No, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. We can certainly do that. That would probably postpone a report, not knowing whether there's interest out there or individuals willing that have already, you know, compiled a group that are willing to take on these responsibilities by April. So if council's okay with that, with waiting until we hear from community members on establishing a group, we can certainly do that.
Okay, and I think CAO Snell would like to weigh in at this point. So, Mr. Snell, go ahead.
Thank you again, Mayor. I think one of the issues that Amy and I have discussed is, and maybe adopting these guidelines is premature to a full extent, but one of the things that we've been asked about or from community members is what their responsibilities would be in if they were to look at starting a dog park. So I think that was part of the justification for us putting forward this report. So maybe even adoption in principle at some future date might be valuable. Or maybe this is good enough to show a community what we think council will be interested in if there's a consensus on the guidelines, because I think that's really our struggle at this point is when Amy meets with community groups, we want to make sure we have clear distinction of what they will be responsible in doing in creating a future dog park.
Thanks, that's helpful, actually. I would generally agree that perhaps, we're receiving the report, that's what's been proposed. Perhaps we need to strengthen that a little bit. It does not necessarily assume that this council is approving a dog park if we move forward, but the notion of adopting in principle or endorsing in principle some of the documents, in particular the terms of reference for a community group as a point of supporting action makes a lot of sense to me tonight, so that we could move forward with that. I personally am aware of at least two parties who have approached me and expressed some interest in nucleating this effort. And they are in the community. So I think that's a story that remains to be unfolded if they're given a little bit of guidance about what it is that this council expects in order to take next steps and consider how the project could move forward. Sure, Councillor Barron's next.
Yeah, I think it's probably closer to a catch-22. Do we wait? How do we get a community committee to start taking a look at a dog park? Do we do it before we've set guidelines, which says that basically we're approving in principle or not? I think coming back in April with Amy looking for direction is fine, and maybe with a little bit more information. We already know that through many surveys, there's a number of people out there that are interested, perhaps in working on a committee, perhaps not. But there's nothing stopping the people out in the community right now from forming a group to bring a presentation to council. So I think what Amy's original thought was to receive this report and bring back further information in April and look for direction is probably most appropriate.
Yeah, I think that seems like a reasonable path forward at this point. I remain interested in additional information in the next report about bylaw enforcement implications. I think my own sense is that what this council is doing here is sort of setting the stage for Ms. Gangle to do and her team to do more work on this, and um, she's indicated that it's her timeline to bring it forward in April with a little bit more work done based on council's feedback tonight. So I think we can assume that that will move forward. So I have a resolution, the original resolution, council, as I said, I would like consideration given to a little bit of study done on the bylaw enforcement implications of this. But the original resolution, sorry, reads that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth received the report entitled "The Guidelines for the Development of a Dog Park in North Perth for Information." Can I get a mover for that? Let's see here. Councillor Richardson, would you serve as our mover for this one?
I will move that. Yes, thank you. On mute.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Rothwell, will you serve as our seconder?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Now, does anyone want to add to this the notion of formally requesting a report about bylaw enforcement, or is it just me who's worried about that? Okay. Do we have any notes, Fairfields? Okay. Councillor Andreessen has expressed some willingness to hear more about the bylaw enforcement thing. Councillor Duncan, did you want to speak, or is that an expression of interest?
I'd like to hear a little more about the bylaw implications as well.
Okay. So can I put to Councillor Richardson, would you be open to a friendly amendment on that asks for additional report on implications of dog park on bylaw enforcement?
Absolutely. I'd be okay with moving that amendment. Thank you.
So that's friendly. All right. And Councillor Rothwell, would you consider that as a friendly amendment?
Yes, I do. I agree.
Okay, thanks. All right, so we have a updated resolution here that calls for receipt of this report for information and also calls for additional report on implications of a dog park for bylaw enforcement moving forward. Any discussion or debate? All right, let's have that vote then. We think Councillor Johnston is with us. We believe he arrived.
I am here, but it did not come up. I will try to get back into eScribe. But yes, I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Todd, I'm in favor as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barron. So with that, so we have a unanimously carried that motion. Thank you. Let's move forward to item 5. Thank you, Amy. Sorry, let me make it really clear. I thought that the amount of work that's been done here and the quality of it was exceptional. And it made it a pleasure to read and sort of get a picture of how we can move forward on this. So personally, I appreciate all that's been done. And I think you heard some of the same from our council colleagues. So I'm hearing that there's some report about my audio quality. I'll keep trying, and we've asked IT to have a look. All right, next up is item 5.4, reports from the Treasury and Finance Department. As item 5.4.1, Council is invited to receive a delegation tonight in support of the corporation's management of the Perth Adult Life Care Residence, submitted by the responsible committee. I think what we'll do is we'll start with our Director of Finance Treasurer, Ms. Hale, and she can guide the traffic from here with regards to her report and the delegation. Ms. Hale, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kaysenberg, members of council. This evening, Lois McLaughlin with us. She's the chair of the Perth Adult Life Care Residence Committee, and she's going to bring you up to date on the 2021 budget. If I might hand it over to Lois, I would do that now.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor Kassenberg and members of council. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Lois.
Great, thank you. As chair of the Perth Adult Life Care Residence Committee, I am here to present the Perth Meadows 2021 operating budget. First of all, I'd like to inform council of the current status of the townhomes and suites. All 18 townhomes, which are life leases, are currently occupied. We have 36 suite units, of which 6 are rentals and the balance are life lease. As of our last committee meeting on February 10th, 2021, there were 6 life lease units available. Since then, however, 2 units have been sold and 2 have been spoken for, but the agreements are still pending. The townhomes are fully self-funding within the budget, and we anticipate a transfer from the prior year's surplus from reserves. The 2021 budget for the town includes a 2% monthly increase for the monthly occupancy fees, with any surplus being reserved for future capital projects. The suites are fully self-funding at the present time. Just a note, an adjustment to, or I just wanted to note one of the items on the budget this year. There is an estimated increase in the water / wastewater services in the 2021 budget. Since the suites are now being charged a monthly per unit charge, which is consistent with all other multi-unit buildings in the municipality. Until the building was fully occupied, we weren't charging that per unit charge. The committee is also looking at real estate commissions as needed for the suite units as they become available. to assist us with selling them. A request for quotes has been sent out to all the real estate agencies. The committee is proposing increase in the monthly occupancy fees for the suites by 2% as well, which has been included in the budget. This will cover costs of inflation and additional costs. A copy of the proposed rate increase schedule to be effective June 1st, 2021 for Perth Meadows was attached to the council report. Even with the current life lease vacancies, in the suites, we has anticipated that the Perth Adult Life Care Residence operations will have fully funded any prior year deficit within the next 3 to 4 years. That is the operating budget. As far as project work, currently the committee and staff are working on getting prices for project work. Projects that are being considered are the replacement of the driveways and repair of Leisure Lane for the townhomes. And the second item is furnace replacements for the units in the suites. Proposed budget project work will be brought back to council for approval. At this time, the committee is recommending approval of the 2021 Perth Adult Life Care Residence Committee budget as presented for the operation of Perth Meadows development totaling $621,875, and that a 2% increase for life lease and rental monthly rates to be effective June 1st, 2021. The committee is also recommending the proposed fee changes for the townhomes and suites to be considered and approved as an amendment to the rates and fee bylaw. That's the end of my presentation of the budget. Is there any questions? If so, I will try to help you with those.
Thanks, Ms. McLaughlin. Ms. Hale, any further comments from the Finance Department?
No, I feel Lois has summed it up very nicely. Thank you.
Indeed she has. Thank you very much. Any questions or first comments on this matter from council? Councillor Richardson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kasenberg. Thanks, Lois. Great to see you again. Thank you. Very good report. I'm just wondering that I do know that I do believe in September, October-ish that the Ontario government had implemented a rent freeze for all of 2021, which I do believe is for the lion's share of any rental tenancy. Would that apply here, like even for the rentals that we have? Like it's actually legislated by Ontario that they can't increase rent for 2021. Would that affect life leases? And obviously it would probably affect the other ones that we actually do have rented, but there's a moratorium on that as of right now. Thank you.
If I might address that, the rate changes will become effective, but if we can't apply them because the province supersedes it, then we will not. But the changes then will be in place going forward, and our residents will be notified. The occupancy fees are different, and my understanding, and I'm sure it could be challenged, Councillor Richardson, but my understanding for the occupancy fees for life leases that it doesn't apply. I haven't seen or found anywhere where this has not been the case that we have been able to apply it to life lease, but if in fact that it comes to light that we can't, we will fix it. But at this point in time, I'm not seeing anything that indicates that it applies to life lease.
Supplemental, if I might, is there an opportunity to possibly get opinion? Because we don't want to get challenged on that. Not that I want to go to legal every single time, but if there's an opportunity to challenge it, like you said yourself, that maybe there's an opportunity that it could be challenged, does that mean it's the right thing to do? I know what you're saying and about it, we can put the rates up, but they would only be effective January 1st, 2022. I just want to make sure that we're within our legal framework to do so, and is it the right time to do it right now, given all the other exceptions that the town is giving for some COVID relief that we have. I just thought I'd make mention of it. Thank you.
Well, if council would be more comfortable, we can definitely just not change the fees at this time. I felt that moving forward with the indication that the fee change be in place, that then we'd move forward with the next one even in the following year, because certainly inflationary costs, we're going to have to catch up at some point in time. But if it's council's wish, we'd be more than happy just to leave the fees and rates bylaw unchanged at this point in time. And that I would take that back, and Lois would take that back to the committee and just let them know what council's concern is at this juncture, and we would deal with it that way. It could be as well.
Further to this line of questioning, then, if council decided to not make this change tonight, what would be the impact to the municipality as a corporation in terms of sponsoring, at least in part, the lost revenues from our budget?
At this point in time, I would suggest that council doesn't approve the budget as either, and that if I have Lois's blessing as the chair of the committee, I just bring back an amended budget that doesn't have the increase in the revenues as proposed.
But if the costs are going up, they have to be paid somehow, right?
Yes. Certainly the two rentals that we have and the rentals for the affordables are under separate legislation and rates, which I was under the understanding that they could move forward, but they wouldn't be applied unless, given that the province has put a moratorium on them until that was lifted.
Okay, I think Councillor Seiler has a question or a comment.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I guess, thank you, Lois, for your report. Very well done. Glad you're with us tonight. I know that the board feels that the development across the highway from us, Perth Meadows is a lot better deal figure-wise with rents and leases and whatnot. And we're just trying to kind of compare with what's going across the road there, and we don't want to get too far behind, and then we have to get caught up. So I think the board feels that this is fairly reasonable, and we're just, hopefully we can make, there's projects that have to be done with the suites, like we're looking at driveways now, and the furnaces are going to be next. So we just don't want to get too far behind and then have ourselves in a spot. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Seiler. Are there any other comments or questions from council at this point? Councillor Richardson, go ahead.
Thank you again. And I certainly wasn't questioning the need to, at some point, increase the rates in order to keep things current, but we also want to be adherent to legislation, excuse me, that we currently have, that if there happens to be a moratorium on that, I'm looking at the Ontario website now, and it's for rented houses, apartments and condos, basement apartments, care homes, including retirement homes, land lease communities, rent geared to income units, and affordable housing units created through the various, even if it was a quick consult with someone at the tenancy board, or if there's another board to there, if we can do it, I'm all in favor of it. But I just want to make sure that we're not going to get into a legal quagmire with it later on by doing this, or at least giving notice come September that we're giving 90 days notice in order to increase it. I think we need to do our jurisprudence to make sure that we're doing it the right way and that we can legally do it. Thank you.
Thanks. What are the implications, if I might ask the treasurer or Lois, of us deferring this until we have that legal opinion?
None. We're way ahead of the June 1st date, and so by all means.
Fran, we can't hear you. I don't know what's happened here. We can't hear you.
Let me try again.
That's
By
fine.
all means, we can defer this till April if you would like, and in the interim, maybe we could have a board meeting as well, just to go over some of the details, such that the board's comfortable and what they bring back, and we could certainly get that legal opinion on the life leases if you would like.
I mean, it's council's will, of course, that matters here. But to me, if there isn't a significant drag on the system of us seeking that advice, then I think Councillor Richardson's opinion is a really valid one and a prudent one in this course. But I'm happy to hear from other councillors on this. I think Councillor Andreessen, we have you queued up next.
Yeah, yes, thank you, through you, Mayor Todd. I just want to echo Councillor Richardson's concerns. I fully support his concerns and feel that we should be seeking legal on this. I don't feel that this type of budget really would be supported in terms of raising rent and life leases. I think that we could get ourselves into some issues because of other legislation that supersedes this. So I agree with what Councillor Richardson is indicating and think we should defer. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Andreessen. Are there any councillors who would make the case to proceed and not defer at this point? I'd like to hear from you if you want to argue the point. Okay, so I think I'm not hearing any voices, and normally I don't, trust me. So I think what we should do is move to defer this. We'll need a resolution for the sake of keeping it nice and clean for the clerk. So why doesn't, let's try this, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the 2021 Perth Adult Life Care Residence Committee budget as presented by the Perth Adult Life Care Residence Committee for the operations of the Perth Meadows development, and that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth defers decision until further consideration by the Perth Adult Life Care Residence Committee, including a legal opinion on recommended rates for our consideration. I think I got most of that. The clerk's nodding her head. Okay, Councillor Seiler, would you serve as our mover for that one?
Yeah, I'll move that. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Andreessen, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, any discussion or debate? Everyone understands what we're talking about now? We've changed the text. Councillor Richardson?
Thank you. One last time, I promise. I'm just wondering if we should put that in there. Maybe if we don't have to go to legal to incur more cost to do that, possibly just reaching out to the landlord and tenant board would be sufficient, but maybe we should keep legal in there as a secondary if we can't get a hold of them. So, because there is a office that would do the landlord and tenant board, that they would be certainly able to answer those questions and not cost anything as compared to an official legal opinion. But I'm just putting that out there, and I'd be just putting it out there, but I'm in favor of deferring. Thank you.
Okay, so why don't we just sort of consider modifying, if the mover and seconder are friendly to it, to seek relevant or appropriate opinions, and that allows the movement of action, whether it's from the landlord tenant review agency or from lawyers or whoever. Is that okay with you? Councillor Seiler, is that okay with you as the mover?
That's fine. No problem with me. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Andreessen, that okay with you as well?
Yep, that's perfectly fine. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any further discussion or debate? Okay, we have modified this resolution. I won't try to read it again because I don't think I can remember what was said, but I'm sure the clerks have it down. So let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. All right. Next up then is item 5.4.2. In this, finance staff has brought forward for council review of the accounts as of this date, March 15th. I'll note again that some councillors have declared a potential pecuniary interest in this item and will absent themselves from consideration and voting. Are there any questions about this report from our staff, for our staff? We're not seeing any, it seems. Okay, so let's, we have a resolution for our consideration then, that the following summary of accounts be received by council for information. The total on the bottom line is $982,021.32. Can I call on Councillor Duncan to be our mover for this one?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I would second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Let's move forward then to item 5.4.3. We are presented here with the annual sold asset report. Exciting reading, actually, outlining proceeds from the selling of municipal assets in 2020. Ms. Hale, do you have any comments to make on this one?
No, I believe the report's self-explanatory as per our policy. It's just to be brought forward to council annually for information.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, I think the resolution needs to say for information. Okay, so I have any questions about this report? Okay, so I have a resolution for our consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receive the 2020 sold asset report for the Municipality of North Perth from govdeals.com for information. Can I call on Councillor Anstead to be our mover for this one?
Yes, I would move that. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Behrens, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, any discussion or debate on this one? Okay, we're not seeing any indication of that, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Well, that was quick. All right. So let's move on then to item 5.5 on the agenda, reports to the Manager of Environmental Services. And we have one item tonight. Item 5.5.1 provides council with the annual water report for the North Perth water system. I'll invite Mr. Hackett for his introduction to this matter. Welcome, Mr. Hackett.
Thank you, Rosenberg and Council. This is just a report for Council's information regarding the water loss in all of the 4 water systems in North Perth. If starting on the next slide, Pat, the listable water system you can see highlighted in yellow in the chart. It has total water supply to the distribution system. So that what that means is that's the water that's metered and pumped from the wells. So there's 3 wells in North Perth. They pump 768,000 cubic meters of water throughout the year in 2020. The next one below that is the authorized consumption and metered. So that simply means it was measured in the meters, in water meters in people's homes or businesses and things like that. So we were captured 727,000 and some change there of cubic meters. The third part of that is the authorized consumption that's unmetered, and that's mainly for things like flushing or filling of the pool, fire protection, things like that. And that came to 18,000. So overall, we had 22,406 cubic meters of water loss. That number is actually very good. If you look at the round circular chart beside it, you can see that we only had 3% water loss in the listable system, so that's very good. If we move to the next slide is the Atwood water system. And again, it's set up the same way. We had pumped 28,000 cubic meters in 2020. We accounted for, through our meters, almost 25,000. We were shy with unaccounted water loss of 3,166, and that equated to, on the chart beside it, 11%. That's a little bit higher than that would normally is, as it's a relatively new water system, but we did have two relatively big service leaks in 2020 that both were very difficult to find, hence the higher percentage. If we move to Gowanstown, again, we are looking at about 10% water loss for Gowanstown. And again, it's a small system. There's only 17 homes on it, so 305 cubic meters were lost or non-accounted for, which is quite a small number. And finally, Molesworth. In the past, council may recall, we've been fighting with this system for a while, losing water. We're in a much better number this year at 12%. That's much improved over the past couple of years. If we move to the all systems on the next slide, you can see that we're only at about 3% loss. And the final slide is the water loss trending. And you can see the various ones. Molesworth is, as you can see, the very top one, and I think that's kind of a gold color. And it's come down from a high of over 30, almost 38% in 2015 down to the 12% in 2020. So that's very good. The other ones have kind of stayed around the same. Atwood popped up in 2019 and remains up a little bit higher than we would expect, but hopefully we've got that one under control as well. So that's it, just for council's information. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thanks, Mark, for the report. Any questions or first comments from council on this matter? Okay, we're not seeing any, so I have a resolution then for our consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receive the 2020 water audit for information. Deputy Mayor Kellum, can I call on you to serve as mover of this one?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thanks. And Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I would second that.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Let us next turn to reports from our operations department, item 5.6 on our agenda. As item 5.6.1, council is invited to accept a bid from BM Ross Engineering, a vendor on our vendor of record list for engineering services related to the development of a consolidated services master plan. This consolidated approach represents a broader way of planning action on our services, as I understand it, and is something of a change, a new step forward perhaps. So I'm going to ask Mr. Couch, our manager of operations, to address this matter. Lyndon, welcome, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I've provided the report as an extension of a previous report from last November, and this was part of the engineering roster process. And this enabled council and staff to utilize a designated and pre-qualified list of engineers for a variety of services. Basically, we found the most qualified firms through their experience, expertise, and their costs, and they were evaluated and listed. BM Ross is listed in this report as having received an award for environmental services, environmental engineering for stormwater management. As the report outlines, this is understood to be their work, and they were providing a proposal on that. However, through the settlement boundary expansion and discussion of the official plan, we were all informed that there's as great a need to understand the other infrastructures, which include the water system and the wastewater system or sanitary sewer systems. The stormwater master plan and these other master plans were considered to be nested together. This is not a North Perth idea. Several municipalities have used this example, and they've even included transportation in a master servicing planning approach. It allows for all of the infrastructure to be reviewed over a longer timeline, and to be understood in terms of what deficiencies they are in those systems, but also where those systems need to be repaired or in what direction they need to be extended or expanded. The best way of describing this is by example. When we are looking at our servicing network, both in Atwood and in Listowel, and we were asked to look at a settlement area that could be potentially developed into, there was no ability to really understand if the capacity of the sewers or the infrastructure were there. Are they big enough? Is the fall great enough? Is there enough capacity or flow in the water system to get to that area? So understanding these things, we've nested it together into a master servicing approach, not only stormwater management, but these other two infrastructures as well, water and wastewater. As this is environmental engineering entirely, it's an expansion under the roster process to include the other services in with the BM Ross proposal. So that's what's in front of you for a total price in the $250,000 to $300,000 range. As I've outlined in my report, the stormwater master plan was estimated around $150,000, and this would represent getting 3 studies done in one. They share many, actually that's an excellent slide to stop on, Pat. You can't really read it on the screen, but the timeline shows us all the aspects of what they're going to do. It's a 2-year endeavor, and it does nest all 3 processes together. It's a very public process. All the stakeholders are consulted through the process, and you'll remember this process through the Northeast Master Planning process. So it's similar, it's lengthy, it's involved, and it's very much an engagement process and research project that will ultimately end up with preferred alternatives, the costs of alternatives, and some of the low-hanging fruit in terms of the projects that are needed in the future for all of these items. So I can answer questions on it, but again, what we have is the environmental services component, that engineer providing services for all 3 in 1 master planning process. So I can answer questions on the process or on the costings.
Thanks, Mr. Couch. Councillors, first comments or questions? I think we have Councillor Richardson first.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the report, Lyndon. I do have a couple of issues with this report, only for the reason is that I think that I understand the absolute need to have a full master plan that encompasses all of the different elements that you've listed in the report tonight. But I also believe that when the original roster system was first created, that it was quite clear and very succinct that the bidders who bid on that of the engineering services portion, that they were put in for stormwater management plan only. And I just think that this goes well beyond, what do they call it, creeping of scope or scope expansion or something like that to include all 3. I understand the need for it, but I think it certainly goes well beyond what was deemed as the original intent of the RFP for pre-qualified engineers. It's a very large ask to go to one particular firm to put it all together. And I'm also wondering that before we had the rostering process and with other firms that we have used in the past, and for anything, like for a lot of the issues that they have, what do they call it? I'm just, pardon for looking away from the camera, I'm just looking on, I think it's the, on Appendix A of the work plan and possible engineering fees. I'm just wondering if there's certain components of that work plan that have already been completed either by other firms or quite recently that we're going to be paying for twice by all of a sudden issuing, letting this go forward, that I don't think it's actually right to expand the scope that much when the other firms didn't have the opportunity to at least bid on that, because it was very clear in the resolution that we approved in November and also with the actual RFP that the different firms quoted on for what they were doing for that aspect of it, of which clearly identifies as being stormwater only. But I also like to wonder that if some of these items haven't already been paid for, because it makes 0 sense at all to go back and pay for it again for something that's already been completed. That makes no sense to me. That's my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Couch, let's have some response to that.
Thank you. One of the concerns I had was exactly what the councillor has been identifying in terms of broadening of the scope of the work. So I did consult with finance and procurement in terms of what the roster allowed or did not allow. It does allow for the extension of similar work. And again, a master plan for stormwater and a master plan for wastewater and a master plan for water systems, as I said, are usually nested together, are environmental engineering work, and are within the scope and the terms of the RFP to allow for that kind of extension. I also got a comment back from finance that you can, under this term of the project, you can introduce other aspects of the project in along the path of the project. And indeed, these are very similar processes. The master plan process itself, as we know and as you have identified here, is shared by all three. And then the research and environmental engineering services that we're asking for in terms of analyzing the infrastructure are very similar. In fact, if they bring out or initiate the need for a survey crew to look at the stormwater pipes and their elevation, they can be using that same survey crew to look at the wastewater pipes and their elevations if there's questions that come from the field in terms of exact information that's needed. And so those are some of the things that you listed in terms of the schedule that's in front of you. Now, in terms of your second question, so I think there was plenty of room, and yes, finance was consultant. We looked at the roster process for this very reason, that we could extend projects and offer them and expedite the process, not have to go to retender every aspect of jobs and slow the boat down in doing so, but directly approach an existing firm that's already qualified and has given us the best pricing most likely as well. So beyond that, your second question was about aspects of the schedule, and we will find that out, and we'll be very cognizant of that as well. If there's components that have already been completed, if there's some modeling, if there's some surveying that's already been done and that the municipality has paid for in the past or used consulting firms for, we can bring that forward through the initial chapters, and those are the research chapters when they look through all the reports and information that we have, and that hopefully would drop the price in that area because they'd utilize it directly. But again, they've identified that, BM Ross has identified that there's some gaps on certain work areas where they will simply have to find out whether this is done and done well enough. If it is excellent, it's going to reduce our costs and it's going to speed up the timeline. If it is not, it's going to have to be redone or expanded or done in a new fashion with today's statistics. So hopefully I've answered both the questions. We're certainly within the bounds of the roster process of expanding it in this way. We've already done that this year, for example, in looking at some engineering services under the roster to extend into construction and tendering with a dedicated firm that had the most experience and background in that area, and will probably do it again. So it's been an exciting process in terms of being able to get quick services, get the best people in, the best firms at the best pricing that were already pre-qualified, and this is just another example of doing that.
Okay, next is Deputy Mayor Pelham.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Todd. And Matt, it's like Family Feud. You hit the button before me, and I believe you answered about 80% of what I wanted to talk about. But no, I accolade all what Matt has said. And, I believe, just doing my math, and thank you for your report, Lyndon, is that I believe it's roughly $60,000 that we have already paid towards this project, and don't think that the ratepayers of all of North Perth should be putting this back into it. So it's in my heart that I'm not for this. I'm not going to support this decision. And I think if we are going to proceed with this master plan, which I believe we should, is that a standalone RFP should be issued so that all engineers can participate and are all on the equal field. So that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Barron's next.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kasenberg. My only concern, I don't have any issue with doing the comprehensive plan um, the master plan with multiple components. I don't have any issue with that whatsoever. My issue is more for the open, transparent, and accountable governance. And I realize that we are new to this rostering, but my concern is in the motion in November, it specifically said engineering storm water management plan. It did not bring in that particular motion to scope what is being talked about here. And my concern being, like, this is double the cost. And I'm concerned about that because I thought the intention, or my impression of what the intention of doing the rostering was for these projects to be completed in who is best qualified to do them. But when we did get the RFPs for to be considered on the roster, this was not mentioned. So do we consider that to be open, transparent, and accountable or not? So for me, it's more of a learning process for the rostering system. What I understood behind, and I believe I was one of the movers or seconders on that motion to accept this particular company for doing the stormwater management plan, it was very succinct and it was a stormwater management plan. It wasn't all of this other included in on that. I could be wrong. Lyndon, please correct me if I am. Once again, I am in full support of doing the comprehensive plan. My only concern is the open, transparent, and accountable that everyone had the opportunity. Thank you.
Mr. Couch?
Yeah, thank you. It was a stormwater management, environmental services, or environmental engineering request that was issued through the roster process. And as I said, I consulted with the finance department in terms of what we can add and not add, but this is considered similar work, and in some cases identical work that could be expanded into as part of what is a same process, a master planning process. So as we look at this, and council needs to understand that if we were to split it out into multiple groups, I believe the companies, there was a Walter Feedy out of Toronto, GM Blue Plan, and Triton Engineering were the three other firms that were on the roster presented. We were to award one firm, and we did, and it was BM Ross, and it was logical to extend those services because I said they're similar, and it's the same process of master planning that we could expand into. But I don't disagree that it said stormwater management and outlined that very clearly because that was the specific project that was in front of us at that time. But um, we're well within the roster process to identify extra works. Now, council just needs to understand that if we do split it up, the stormwater master plan would go to BM Ross is what's been agreed to. Then the water and the wastewater could go to another firm or firms, and we would run 3 master plan processes with up to 3 firms, I suppose, if we were to look at it that way. And that's what would be in front of us. Costing would go up, and we're almost certain, and corresponding with finance in terms of splitting it amongst various firms, that we will see a much higher price when we add the 3 numbers together than the one that's in front of you tonight. But I would be able to bring back perhaps more information from finance in terms of the layout, but I think it's been well explained, and the decision is in front of us in terms of what was hopefully to be the most efficient, quickest way to get to the best information using an already qualified firm that's given us specific rates that they cited and quoted in this document in terms of the next 2 years of work. So I really can't add to it, but it's within the bounds of the project.
Okay, Lyndon, that is not necessarily what my understanding was when it was presented to council in November and the motion was accepted. I am not suggesting in any way we farm it out to a number of firms, and I don't know where that idea came from. What I'm suggesting is it is probably more of a technical issue in that the RFP was for stormwater management. It does not appear in any way to be open, transparent, and accountable that now we're extending the scope by 50% at least, if you judge it by the cost, to other areas, I think you're missing the point in what I'm trying to make here. To me, this is a very technical point on council and what we did and why we did it, with a misunderstanding that's now being interpreted differently. It's just a technical concern. I am not against having one company do an entire comprehensive plan. Mine is more the technical aspect of it.
Thanks, Councillor Barons. I'm going to draw CAO Snell into this at this point. I think we're getting into some interesting areas, and perhaps Chris has some comments. He's indicated he does. So, CAO Snell.
So I think, and having sort of this has been our first experience with rostering, I think this is part of the issue. But I mean, we picked 3 engineers for linear road work, and we picked a couple for drainage, and we picked 1 for environmental. And that was the decision of council at that time. So if we go back to wanting to get away from our roster, then to me, we got to go back to the old ways of farming every project at every engineering firm. If we destroy the rostering competitive bid for our first rostering project, to me, we sort of spent a lot of time rostering engineers for nothing. To me, it wasn't just about stormwater management, it was about all environmental processes for the period of contract. Just like when we did bridges, it was all bridges for the period of the contract. So if we want to start going back to rostering or RFPing every engineering project, I guess that's certainly the will of council, but that certainly means a lot more work for staff. I think it's unfortunate that BM Ross has provided all this documentation to us publicly, because certainly they've lost their competitive edge. But this was sort of the intent of a rostering project, or rostering of engineers. I guess that's really all I can add. It wasn't specifically just about stormwater management, it was about all environmental components when we assigned an engineer for environmental work.
Okay, thanks, CEO Snell. I think it appears that some members of council are concerned that that's not how they perceived it when it was brought to this council for the rostering vote, the vote on the roster. And I'm not sure how to respond to that at this point. It sounds to me like the staff position is essentially that when we were rostering, we intended environmental engineering, but we did say words like stormwater in the legislation that we brought forward, right? So any last comments on that one, Chris, before I move on to other councillors who want to have a say on this?
Well, certainly, I guess we didn't list all the road projects either, but we could have also significant road projects come forward in the next couple of years that one of the 3 engineers that didn't make the roster could also suggest that they could give us a better price as well. So I guess, I mean, it's sort of, if we're going to deal with this every time we bring forward a rostering engineer, we've defeated the purpose of the process.
Okay, and just sort of as a point of information then, if you might help, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too far, but are our neighbors, do we have examples of neighbors who have rostered this kind of work, just to refresh my memory?
Certainly, we've used municipal best practices when we put together the rostering of engineers. I don't know that we have anybody locally specifically used in the rostering process. I mean, in the past, some of these projects were just awarded. I hate to say it to almost anybody. We would get a couple of quotes sometimes, but in not so distance past, it was almost just work that was handed out without any pre-qualification at all.
Okay, thanks. Let's turn, I think, next to, who's next? Councillor Richardson again. You know, actually, from a speaking order perspective, we should be looking at new speakers at this point. So Councillor Rothwell, I think you're next.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and thanks, Lyndon, for the report, and Chris for your comments. I have two. I'm certainly in support of the need for us to move forward, and I take it from Lyndon's comments is that this is a time-sensitive matter. Secondly, I want to know as to whether the staff had intended for us to undertake this type of project from an engineering scope back in November, and if they did, why they didn't let council know. Thank you.
So this could be Mr. Couch or CAO Snell. You guys arm wrestle over that. Answer that one.
I can certainly answer the question. Is certainly up until we started delving into the official plan and the potential boundary expansion questions that are being asked by the county, we did not have knowledge of the extent of the requirement for a overall servicing plan for water and sewer at that time.
Okay, anything further, Councillor Rothwell?
No, it's what I will say. I think it's unfortunate that we didn't have that, because again, when staff and council did the master growth plan, there was significant engineering involved in that. So as I say, it's a matter of us hearing then from a standpoint. My first question was, is this a time sensitive matter that is the reason why we're pursuing this in terms of the report coming through to council for, clearly the expansion of what was originally understood by council? Is that the reason is from a timing perspective? Is that correct?
I think I can approach that. Just to advise that the stormwater master plan has been on the council capital program for 2 years. We were waiting for conclusion of some projects and then the roster process to be finalized last year, and it was finalized towards the end of the year. So stormwater was the low-hanging fruit that we wanted to do, and it needs to get accomplished as soon as possible. Every time we see a new development come in, we're really unequipped to answer whether we can service it, and we can't provide the information. So we're really chasing development and not able to answer questions fairly about what our capacities and abilities are. So very much staff is much like council, wants to get all three of these done in one shot as much as possible. So stormwater has been on the docket for a while. These two have been added on now, and it's being a 2-year project to get good answers. Yeah, we would like to expedite the project, but I just want to stress to council that the stormwater request was clear to BM Ross. We were going to get information from them and a proposal from them on stormwater. By adding these, we feel that there was efficiency, as I've already explained, and cost effectiveness. If it were to be split off, we would be putting a proposal forward in some way for the other aspects separate of that, and it would mean we would be no doubt doubling up work, and that's where the real efficiencies were here. And the only reason why it was brought forward in the way it was for that efficiency and cost effectiveness.
Thanks, Mr. Couch. Okay, let's go back to Councillor Richardson.
Thank you again. When we had originally gone through the whole RFP to go to the roster, and don't get me wrong, I totally agree with what the other councillors have made mention of having a total master plan. With the amount of growth that we have, it's absolutely essential that we have that. I think it's just how we got to that point. In the initial RFP that went out, point number 5, it's a environmental engineering. It wasn't carte blanche, and it was not. It was strictly referencing stormwater management, because I'm looking at it right now. And that's exactly what it was referencing. And that's what I'm basically saying is the fairness and the transparency of the other firms to adequately bid on that and put in, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. Sorry about that, ribbit. But no, I also think that it was explicitly listed, and also with the motion that we had passed and the resolution that we had passed was for stormwater management. And I know we're parsing English here, but council, with every bylaw and resolution that we pass, we get parsed with English all the time. I'm not in favor of this the way it sits. I totally agree that we need to do something with that, whether who it goes to. Possibly, like Deputy Mayor Kellerman said, even for our top three at the rostering, and I don't want to get rid of the rostering. I'm not saying that. Possibly for the top three, is there any way that we can have some supplemental information to come back or to do this again? Because as it sits now, I'm not in favor of it. I just think we're spending money twice, and I understand Lyndon and Chris's comments that have come back. I just think if we're spending money twice, like we're spending good money after bad. Like that's all I happen to be saying about this. But it was pretty clear and succinct right out of the hop, right out of the gate in November, that the RFP rostering process was going to go to stormwater management only. And then all of a sudden, if it was a slight expansion, another $15,000, $20,000 because we needed this, that, and the other, we wouldn't be having this conversation. When it doubles in size, that's a totally different animal in my eyes. So I'm not in favor of it the way it sits. If we need to come back with some other information, I'd be willing to hear that as well. But I'm out for as far as this goes, the way it sits tonight. Thank you. Sorry for the coughing.
No worries. I see Councillor Seiler wants to weigh in for the first time, so we'll call on him next.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, and thank everybody for the comments and whatnot have you. And I guess I have to take myself back to 2002 when we had Carl Armstrong as our public works man, and we did our #1 drain. And there was committees, ad hoc committees back then that we worked together through that drain. There was a counselor from each ward, and we tried to do our 100-year flood plan back then and whatnot. And I think that we did our homework fairly well with all our stormwater management ponds and trying to follow this 100-year flood plan. So I have to question, is it worth spending the money to do this now, or do we have to do it? Or I haven't really seen, I know we've had some high waters, but that's my question. Is this necessary or not? Thank you.
Mr. Couch. Mr. Couch, we're not hearing you.
Thank you. Apologies. Just new areas that we're expanding into. This whole process includes Atwood, and we really have no data, no information whatsoever on Atwood and any of these servicing issues. And we need to put that information together. We need to research it and finalize it. So Atwood's a big one. The other area is the settlement boundary expansion areas as well. There's been no study and understanding of what it's going to take to bring infrastructure out to those areas. So we need to do something in both those spots. I think we've all been surprised at how quickly we're expanding. It's exciting, but we need to be prepared. So I would say it is urgent on all levels for the master plans to go out now.
Thank you.
I guess I can just add to Councillor Richardson, or answer Councillor Richardson's comment. So I would suggest that any data that we have either previously paid for is our data and should be available to us and will be provided through to BM Ross. We will not be paying for any services twice. So any of the data that was collected for the Northeast Master Plan or during the school Binning Street expansion will all be forwarded to BM Ross. And that is one of the reasons why BM Ross gave such a wide variance in this project, because of the time we haven't collected all the information. So they kind of gave us a best and worst case scenario, and certainly any information that any engineering firm has done before for this type of work will be forwarded on to BM Ross.
Thanks, CAO Snell. I think that you know that assurance is important, obviously, to this council, that we don't want to pay twice for anything, and so certainly the opportunity to consolidate the data and make sure that if we elect as a council to endorse this proposed resolution, that our chosen vendor will receive all the information they need. Anyone else? I do have a few comments, but I want to make sure that everyone else has been had the opportunity here. Julie, Councillor Barnes.
Yeah, I somehow got buried in the chat list. I just wanted to make certain that everyone understood my opposition was just purely on a technical. It could have been a technical error and just simply highlighting stormwater management. In that particular case, I don't understand why the motion just simply didn't say environmental engineering and leave it at that. But in the supplemental information that we received prior to making that decision, it only talked about stormwater management. It did not talk about the rest. I don't want to skirt the rostering program. I don't want to do 3 different plans. I do believe doing one comprehensive multi component plan is the way to go by one firm. I simply believe that there is a technical error, and since it is within a year, perhaps we should consider going back and correcting that and removing the terminology stormwater and simply leave it at environmental engineering, if that's what our intent. I'm hearing now from staff that that is what our intent was. I think we obviously have to be very careful of our motions in the future going forward and how they can be interpreted. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Barnes. I would agree. I find myself a little bit troubled by that challenge around the terminology for this one, and so I agree that you know, one thing that we probably need to look at then is to reevaluate that particular roster and perhaps clarify what our intentions are with regards to the services that are offered under environmental engineering, one way or the other, either loosening the language to environmental engineering and making it clear that that's not just about stormwater, but about other options as well. You know, I'm going to play sort of the other card here. I find myself quite concerned, actually, that this council has received and staff has received a report and a proposal, essentially, from an esteemed engineering firm, esteemed enough that they made our roster, and that in that report they have revealed what normally would be confidential information if this were a public tender process into the public domain, and that we've brought that forward in the public domain. I think that at this point, there is, you know, given the insecurity around some of the terminology that we used when we rostered, I can appreciate where councillors may be sitting on this issue. But at the same time, I think you need to also take the perspective of BM Ross into consideration here. I am quite concerned that they have now had competitive information revealed about this particular project. And should we move forward and say, no, we're not going to award this, but we're going to put this out to RFP, we have essentially compromised their ability to compete well in the RFP by revealing this data in the public domain. So for me, I find myself quite concerned by the whole ball of wax that's emerged. It's a complex problem, actually, that we've kind of found ourselves facing here tonight. And I am struggling to approach this by putting this back out to RFP. I can't see it I understand the arguments around accountability and transparency, but we did indeed elect a rostering process. As Councillor Behrens has eloquently positioned, it appears that our staff has made some technical issues in the way it's described this to us when council considered it. And that's something that we perhaps need to tighten up. But at this point, I think we've compromised BM Ross in a way that's unfortunate. And I can't bring myself to say that we should open this back up to public tender. I just don't see it. I think the greater harm could be hurting BM Ross in this process. Council, what's your will at this point? I have a resolution. I can put it on the floor for consideration, and we can do straight up and down on this one and see where it lands if you'd like. It seems like the most reasonable process forward, unless there's a strong call for some alternative. Councillor Richardson, a suggestion?
Oh, sorry about that. I would defer this for further information and discussion with BM Ross, because I had thought the same thing, because they and regardless of what my comments were previously, they have released some information to the public expecting this to go through. However, there was a technical glitch. I would say possibly defer this, possibly conversations with BM Ross to find out, hey, this has happened. This is where we're at right now, and to come back with a supplemental. And I'm only talking about maybe a week or so, and to say that this gremlin has basically poked its head out. I'm not in support in the way it's going forward this evening, but I would like to see it corrected, because I do think that the rostering system can work. I just think that there was possibly for the first swing at the cat, that I think that maybe there was a couple of technical issues created. I don't know. I guess it's a very, very, very unfortunate learning. But I think we need to either go back to the table, but at least notify BM Ross that this has happened. And I would say defer this pending further information from conversations from our CAO and and Lyndon as well, depending. That's only what I'm thinking. That I think we need to say something at this point, because something has to change with either the rostering process going forward, because if not, anything can just be added to anything going forward. But we also need to keep cognizant of the fact of any information that they provide us when that happens, then we're in the situation that we are now. So possible deference until further information.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Richardson. I want to direct one question to Mr. Pouch, just to sort of evaluate. This council's next regularly scheduled council meeting is April 15th, I believe. 12th, April 12th, thank you. In between, we do have two special council meetings planned that relate to training of council, but we are not scheduled to entertain regular business until the 12th of April. Is deferring to that point in time onerous, undue, unreasonable?
Thank you, and no, I think this could be deferred to that point. I could get more information back to council or respond to any questions that have been made and those that have been explained tonight.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Behrens, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I would support deferral, but I really do believe, from my perspective, it's simply technical. And if we could go back and either amend that motion that was made in November to clarify the understanding, which I believe you can do, that then I wouldn't have any issue with this whatsoever. I don't want to retender. I don't want to separate it out into individual firms. I simply think this technical aspect, and that's our learning, and I do believe the rostering system will work. It's just that on a technicality, I don't want to be challenged in court by others either. And I think it's important that perhaps if we're leaving it till the April 12th meeting anyway, perhaps it's a great opportunity to go back and make a statement to clarify what the intention, what we find out now was the intention of that motion. I'm not sure if that's possible. I'll wait for the clerk or the deputy clerk to clarify, but perhaps that should be done before this is approved. Those are my comments.
Thanks, Councillor Behrens. While you were speaking, as you raised the issue, the clerk and I were just sort of conferring briefly about this in the chamber. And I think your strategy is sound, that we defer with a direction to staff to bring us a report, which includes consideration of whether we should reconsider or amend previous actions on this matter. I find myself unsure. I think there's still some legal and even ethical questions around this whole thing, one way or the other. So I think we're going to have to figure it out. But the best way to do this is to ask staff, I think, as you suggested, to bring back reports to us to help us understand this. The clerk is nodding her head vigorously at this point, up and down, which means yes. So that's great. Any last comments from anyone before we sort of recast this motion into a deferral? Let's do that then. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth defer awarding the contract for the servicing master plan until staff bring forward additional information in a report for April 12th, 2021. Any suggestions for improving that one? Okay, let's call on Councillor Richardson. You seem reasonably interested in that deferral. Can I call on you to be our mover for that?
I will gladly move that. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Rothwell, would you serve as our seconder?
I'll second the motion, yes.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? All right, amended motion. Everyone on council understands. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Mr. Couch, you're still on the hot seat. Item 5.6.2. Council is asked to confirm the results from a tender for the replacement of a municipal structure number 060071 and award a contract to Van Driel Excavating. Any comments on this one, Lyndon?
Thank you, Mayor Todd. No real additions here. The low bid is being awarded for both of these projects. One is a complete replacement. This is a complete replacement of a structure. I added a key map in an email for council's information showing where it is in the south of Elma Ward. And the recommendation is in front of you for the low bidder to be awarded the work. It is on budget and the resolution's in front of you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or first comments on this matter? Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks, Mayor Todd. And through you to Lyndon, thanks very much for the series of reports. And I do appreciate the additional information that was shared. I think it's crucial for our councillors that are making decisions on these to know exactly where it is that we're talking about. And although you as a staff person may very well know where structure 0670 is, frankly, there was no clue until I saw the map. So I appreciate the additional information. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Indeed, I was in the same boat, wondering where it was. All right, I have a resolution then for consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth award the tender for North Perth Structure 060071 replacement as per the recommendation from GM Blue Plan Engineering Limited to Van Driel Excavating in the amount of $282,290 and 72 cents HST excluded. Councillor Seiler, will you move that?
Yes, I'll move that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Andreessen, will you serve as seconder?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Similar process here for item 5.6.3. Council is asked to confirm the results from tender for the replacement of a municipal structure number 154086. Not replacement, this is rehabilitation, sorry. And award a contract to Wellington Construction. Any comments, Mr. Couch, on this one?
Only that this is for the low bidder again and within budget, structure slightly to the north, and as it explains, refurbishment of much of the exposed concrete works on the support members of the bridge. So it's a rehabilitation project.
Great, thank you. Any questions or first comments from council on this one? Right, I have a resolution that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth award the tender for North Perth Structure 154086 rehabilitation as per the recommendation from GM Blue Plan Engineering to Wellington Construction in the amount of $96,940 HST excluded. Can I call on Councillor Anstett to be our mover for that?
Yes, I would move that. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Behrens, will you serve as seconder?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. And now Mr. Couch gets to leave the hot tank here. All right. Now let's turn to item 5.7. Thanks, Lyndon, for all of the work, and your team too. Let's turn to item 5.7. This is a matter of some importance to our community's safety and well-being. And I'm glad that Fire Chief Ed Smith is here to tell you about the work that has been done and to provide recommendation to this council. In item 5.71, council is asked to formulate a new agreement with some other Perth County municipalities for the purposes of contracting a single supplier of fire dispatch service. This has been the subject of an RFP that was administered with gratitude from us by Perth County on behalf of the lower tiers who are affected by this need. I'm going to ask Chief Smith to give us an overview of the work process that's unfolded to this date and explain the solution that has been proposed. Welcome, Chief.
Sorry, get my mic down here. Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Yes, in regards to this RFP, you explained it quite well that we've had meetings prior to this and that the Perth County was authorized to go ahead with an RFP on behalf of all the lower tiers that are involved in this dispatching. And we did go through the RFP process. It was very rigorous, to tell you the truth, because there's a lot of technical information involved in it. So you can see who was all involved in the team that went through it and who, sorry, was our supporting team. And after going through the RFPs, we received two, and we reviewed both of them. It took a lot of work, and we did come up with Owen Sound Emergency Communications Center as our top pick for the RFP. In saying that, I can go through a lot of detail that is listed here, but it would take quite a while to get through it all. But when we went through the process with the two vendors that bid on the RFP, it was found that Owen Sound had really laid theirs out and done their homework with the RFP in regards to what type of equipment, what connections were going to be required to meet what we needed, uh, to have the system up and operating. And in saying that, the other bidder had left a lot of areas open that we were not sure of, and that there was going to be additional costs that we were not able to really determine what they were going to be, where Owen Sound had put the additional costs in and supplied us with a lot closer pricing to have this system up and operational. And in saying that, if we just continue on with it, because I won't read it word for word, but the big issue, I think, for council's concern is the issue of liability. And currently, under the current contract with our supplier, we sit in a very, very vulnerable position with liability. And you'll see on the financial implications of this that this agreement isn't coming cheaply compared to what we had been paying. But the big issue is what we had been paying in one sense was not a great deal because it hadn't kept up to the requirements that are to be met today within the communications world, especially under NG 911, which they have not done any of that work. And this vendor, Owen Sound, has pretty well completed it. So the major concern of this that I'm bringing forward, and this is kind of a time sensitive situation, and that's why it was a very short notice when I realized that we didn't have 2 more council meetings in March. There is a major increase in the costs to go forward with this process, but my recommendations to council is we do not have a whole lot of other options because of the liability that the current system is putting on the municipality by not keeping up to the requirements. So all I can say is no doubt council has read the report, and as I say, I'm not going to go through it word by word, but all I can do is recommend to council to look at this report closely and to go ahead, recommend to go ahead with having Owen Sound as our dispatch center. Excuse me, and hopefully the rest of the players that are involved in this will go forward with them also, so that the fire service in the county can go ahead and have a proper dispatching center. I'm open for any questions that I can hopefully answer for the members of council. So at this time, any of the members of council that wish to ask me questions, I hope I can answer them for you.
Thanks, Chief Smith. First comments or questions on this matter from council? Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks, Mayor Todd, and through you, thanks very much, Chief Smith, for your report on this crucial matter. My 2 questions that I have are, you specifically mentioned the area up in Wallace, which is served out of Minto. Does the fire dispatch for Minto have the same capabilities as what Owen Sound has in terms of preparations for the next generation 911?
Yes, Councillor Rathwell, they're dispatched out of Guelph for that particular area. And Guelph is, to my understanding, meeting the requirements at this time of what they're to meet the NG 911.
Thanks very much, Chief. And my supplementary is this. I believe you mentioned in your comments about pricing and so on. Frankly, if you're not getting what you need, it's not necessarily considered to be a great deal. I think it's important from our public safety that we do move forward on a dispatch system which is going to address the issues and ensure public safety and reliability in the system moving forward. So I'm speaking in favor of your recommendation. Thanks very much, sir.
Thank you.
Councillor Barons is next.
And I too as well, no questions, just want to make comment in full support of this. I know it's been an issue for a number of years, and I'm glad to see the entire county moving forward to get the best service that we can for our fire dispatch. So 100% support of this motion. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or first comments? Okay, I have a resolution for our consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the fire dispatch RFP report, and that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the fire dispatch RFP award to the Owen Sound Emergency Communications Center, and that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to execute the respective fire dispatch service agreement with Owen Sound Emergency Communications Center. Can I call on Councillor Duncan to be our mover for that one?
I most certainly will move that.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? We're not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief. Always good to see you.
Excuse me, Mayor Kasenberg, you just mentioned one thing about the information on that community that council received in regards to the fire college training.
Yes, indeed. Can you give us your brief impressions?
Okay, yes, this community came out in regards to their future plans for training. As you can see, it did show some of the regional training centers that are there or proposed. No question, yes, the facilities will be there. This is their modernization with the closing of the fire college. But I will stress to council that it is not going to repair the problem of what the cost is going to be going forward. Just in saying that also, there will be eventually a report go to council. As of last Thursday night, the province and fire marshal's office has given some funds towards the fire service because of the closing of the college. Our share of the funds that we will receive as a municipality and a fire department was $7,800. In saying that, I must have a report to the fire marshal's office by March 19th, which is the end of this week, explaining and showing exactly where I'm going to spend that $7,800, and then also have the application into them, and then I have to bring it forward to council in the future to have them approve it. And it also has to be spent by the end of August. So I'm not sure if that was a real gift or if it was just a case of they're showing us that they're trying to support us. So that's my 2 cents on that. And no doubt you've seen the community and the listing of the courses that are available online and blended courses, which of course means online and also a practical portion of it, which has to be done at a training center. Of course, they listed the NFPA numbers, which for council's appreciation, they really don't know what the numbers exactly mean. 1521 is your safety officer, 1031 is a fire inspector, 1035 is a life safety educator, 1021 is a fire officer, and at the different levels, because there's 4 levels in that. And 1041's an instructor, level 1 and 2, and 1001 is level 1 and 2's firefighter levels, and 1002 is a pump operator and driver level. So just for clarification, they sent this out to councils so that they could show that they have a grasp of what they're planning to do, but it in no way is it relieving what the cost will eventually be in training. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Yes, $7,800 seems like a small budget for training supports in the aftermath of this council change, this training center change. Thank you for your questions, and of course, the council is willing to hear more about this as it unfolds. All right, let's move on in our agenda. For item 6.1, councilors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or of our committees? To request that opportunity, just so indicate in the chat function, please. Okay, we're not seeing anything at this point in time. Oh, Councillor Duncan. Okay, Councillor Duncan.
Actually, it's just what it is. Alan brought up a point tonight here that made me think all of council has access to the GIS system, and I'm wondering if maybe council could get some training on how to operate the GIS system to our advantage, so that in a situation where we're unclear as to where a structure or some other item in the GIS system might be, we can look it up on that system and find that information for ourselves. I'm kind of somewhat knowledgeable about how it works, but I'd love to have a little bit more training on that if there's some way we could be provided that.
Thanks, Councillor Duncan. The clerk is smiling relatively broadly, actually, in response to that suggestion, which suggests that you might get your opportunity quite soon. I think she's even thinking that she may factor that into one of our extra meetings this month. So very timely and quite responsive seems to be the answer to that. Thanks so much for raising it. Any other requests from staff at this point or from our committees? Okay, let's move forward then. We've received no additional items of correspondence beyond that shared in the consent agenda for council's disposition. That brings us to item 8 on our agenda, which allows council to consider and enact bylaws. Turning to item 8.1, council is asked to enact a bylaw to permit a conditional second dwelling unit on a property in Moncton. This is before us. I guess, are there any comments about this, Clerk Berkels? I guess it's a pretty standard matter, commonly associated with construction or renovation. Right, in the building of a new home. Thank you. Okay, so council, I have a bylaw resolution for our consideration then, that bylaw number 28-2021 being a bylaw to authorize the signing of a conditional second dwelling agreement with Connie Lynn Bull, be introduced, read and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed. The said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councilor Johnston, can I call on you to serve as our mover for this one?
Yes, I would be glad to move that.
Thank you. And Councilor Richardson, will you serve as seconder?
I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate on this one? Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. That brings us to agenda item number 9. Are there any notices of motion from councillors attending this evening? Okay, we're not seeing any. That brings us to agenda item number 10. For item 10.1, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? And if you'd like to speak, please so indicate in the chat function, and we'll work the speaking order. Deputy Mayor Kellum is first.
Yes, thank you through Mayor Todd. Just as we know, in a couple of days is a 10-year anniversary for a dark day for our municipality that happened. And I'm just wondering if we are doing anything for that, or if we have prepared anything, whether it's put our flags down or whatever, but just to honor our two fellows that we lost 10 years ago on March 17th. I'm opening that up for discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Maybe I'll direct first to CAO Snell. If you have any comments on this or ideas that you'd like council to consider.
I mean, certainly every year the chief lays the wreath at the firefighter memorial. It doesn't meet our lowering flag policy, but we do certainly recognize the event every year through social media, as well as I said, like the chief does do a wreath laying ceremony at the site. I don't know if Chief Smith is still with us or not, if you had any comments.
Yeah, I'm still here. Just 1 second here. I can't seem to get my video to come back. Okay, I'm back. Okay, yes. There was a number of things that have occurred thus far with the media. I know Councillor Behrens has been involved in it, and myself in regards to comments for the media with the 10th anniversary. The firefighters will be conducting a ceremony at the memorial early in the morning on the 17th. And of course, I will be laying a wreath again, as I normally do every year. The Atwood firefighters are having a get together and a remembrance that evening in Atwood at the fire station there. So basically that's what's been going on. I've had discussion with the one family because of the media being involved. And I don't think anybody was really right out looking to have anything major go on, because it isn't like it's a celebration, but yet we don't want to forget by any means. So if council wishes, yes, you do have a bylaw for flag lowering, but if council wishes, they could pass, I'm sorry, CAO Snell, whether that's permissible or not, that we could lower the flags that day if they wish, if council wishes. But as far as anything else special, there's been nothing else planned that's special.
CO Snell, I'm sort of indication from the clerk that we could amend the policy for this occasion, sort of a special circumstance amendment if we wish to.
Yeah, I would just ask it be passed by resolution. I certainly I don't have a problem with that. That's for sure.
Okay, so I think there's probably a sentiment from council, from what I'm seeing, that that might appreciate this extra action, given that it's the 10th anniversary of this very sad and difficult event in our community. I see there are some on the speaking list. Do we have? Okay, so we. Councillor Richardson, you would like to make a comment?
Hi, thank you through you, Mayor Kasenberg. I also think that this is very important, that it should absolutely be done, that any flags that we can lower should be lowered to half staff, and just sign a respect for the municipal employees that we had 10 years ago. It was a very dark day. As much as Patty Fest is a bright light in North Perth, it's also a very dark day in North Perth. It's sort of polarizing. So I do think that even if it's for one day from here on in, doesn't have to be on a special anniversary for the wreath laying, even lowering the flag on that on March 17th. I would be total in agreement to that, but that's up for council discussion. But ultimately, it needs to happen. Thank you.
Okay. I think the big question is, do we do this like inclusively and allow this to happen indefinitely if we wish, or do we just do it for this occasion? Councilor Richardson, I got your sense that you'd rather just sort of open it up. Are there other opinions on council at this point? we see anything, Clerk Berfelds, in the comments? No further comments. Okay, so why don't we, pursuant to the Deputy Mayor's question, why don't we put a resolution on the floor? Can we do that, Clerk Berfelds, that amends our policy with regards to flag lowering and and permits the lowering of flags for the purposes of honoring our beloved firefighters who lost their lives 10 years ago in fighting a fire locally. At council and staff's discretion. I mean, I don't know that I want it to be directive that it has to happen every March 17th. I think to some degree that should be in the hands of the council at the time. But I don't also want to close it off and say it's just for tomorrow or Wednesday, sorry. I think we should leave it open and it can be just revisited every year. Deputy Mayor, since you raised this one, would you serve as our mover for it?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And can we call on Councillor Rothwell? Will you serve as our seconder for this one?
I will, yes.
Thank you. Okay, any discussion or debate? Did we miss anything in this resolution? I wish I could put up on the screen for it. It's essentially to amend the policy that allows for this to happen on March 17th moving forward. Okay, with that, then Danette, I'm hoping you've caught up with us. Can you trigger a vote for us? That's great. Thank you, and that's carried. With regards to this action, certainly I'll make myself available. I'm sure if the deputy mayor can be there, he also would make himself available for representation of council in this matter when we lower the flags. Any other announcements under item 10 on our agenda? That brings us to agenda item number 11 then. We have two matters before us to be considered in the closed session of council. I have a resolution for our consideration that enables our actions and allows us to enter closed session. Let me read that into the record that this committee proceed in camera at 9:28 p.m. to address a matter pertaining to one, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees regarding Celebrate North Perth awards, and two, security of the property of the municipality or local board regarding the former Moncton Library. Can I call on Councillor Seiler to be our mover for this?
I will move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Andreessen, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate on this one? Okay, let's have that vote. Okay, so that's carried. Thank you, Council. At this time, staff who have not been invited to what follows in our closed session should exit the meeting. Thank you for your service tonight. We're going to take a, let's call it a 10-minute break. We need a comfort break at this point. There's still some work to be done. And we're going to reconfigure the AV momentarily so that we can have our discussions in camera. So 10 minutes from now, let's call it 8:40. Or 9:40, sorry, I'd like to have you back. going to stop my video here. Is anyone keeping an eye on the YouTube feed just to see that we have restored full functionality at this point? Just concerned about whether it's transmitting, but maybe we should just proceed, and if it's not, then that's a failure of technology. Okay, so thank you. With regards, we've concluded our closed session meeting, and that brings us to item 12 on our agenda, which is the opportunity to report back to council. There's no report to be made in public session at this time. That brings us to item 13 on our agenda. That is the confirmatory bylaw opportunity. The council, as a mandated good practice, acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what's called the confirmatory bylaw. I have a draft that reads as follows: that bylaw number 31-2021, being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Councillor Rothwell to be our mover for this one?
I so move.
Thank you. And Councillor Seiler, will you be our seconder for this one?
I will second it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Any discussion or debate? Noting that some of our colleagues won't be voting on this. Do we have eScribe still functioning, or are we doing a manual vote? Okay. So are there any opposed? All right, that's carried then. That brings us to our closing opportunity here. Council, we have completed the deliberations and taken action on the business that did come before us tonight. Before I read a motion to adjourn, is there any further business? Seeing no indication of that, I have a motion to adjourn that reads as follows: that the council meeting adjourns at 10:42 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, April 12th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Before I call for a mover and seconder, let's just clarify: next week, next Monday, council will be having a training meeting that is not open to the general public, I believe, but it'll be on YouTube. Okay, so it's a committee meeting for the opportunity, with the opportunity for relaxed debate. So that's next Monday. There is a meeting, and there also is a meeting the following Monday. And that one is an education and training meeting. So there'll be more details coming out. But council, we do have the next 2 Mondays booked, just not as regular council meetings. Okay, let's get our mover and seconder. Councillor Andreessen, will you move to adjourn?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Anstedt, will you second to adjourn?
Yes, I will second that. Thank you.
That's not debatable. So are there any opposed at this time? We'll call that carried. Thank you. I'm going to pick up my mother's shillelagh. Hopefully the last time this year any of you will see this, and declare this meeting adjourned. And we will again meet for council business 12th at 7 p.m. in this digital virtual format. Until then, have a great, thank you, council.
Good night, all.
Good night.